Hello, welcome to Platforming Community Live. Jacob, how are you doing this week?
Yeah, I'm good, fella. How you going?
Yeah, really well. Really excited to dig into what we've got to chat about today. So why don't we kick it off? What are we chatting about today?
Nice one. Well, last time we spoke about the participation ladder
Hmm.
and talking about understanding how community members, where within the engagement levels and advocacy are the community members involved in your platform. Highly recommend going and watching that. Um, Today touches on that a little bit, where we try to understand how to know who is at what level in that participation ladder, but also just in general around data. The deep, dark world of data, which is often, I suppose, in a community looked upon, I know, by some community managers with a little bit of fear and frustration, because community is about passion, connection, and love. And things. It doesn't need to be tracked and so on. And I totally appreciate and hear all of that. But that often comes from a lack of ability to gain data or
Mm.
get the right data. I think drives those fear. Would you say, Pete, from your
Yeah,
from your
I
knowledge?
think so. I think it can sometimes be seen as kind of a necessary evil, like extra admin that a community manager might need to do as part of their already busy kind of schedule is then pulling data in to do reporting. But I think from my chatting with various community managers of various sizes, it's one of those things which is completely necessary because without data, you're just kind of putting your finger in the air and guessing whether things are going well.
Yeah,
And
this is it.
at the end of the day, every community's got a purpose, whether that purpose is to, you know, engage people to they do something or to reduce support times or to increase sales. It has a purpose. And if you don't know if your community is improving that, then it's kind of hard to prove your value as a community. And if as soon as you can prove your value as a community, it becomes much easier to knock on the door of whoever's funding your community and ask for more.
Yeah, it was one of the topics actually at our digital community leaders dinner. Um, Back in May. No, March.
Mhm.
Back in March. I think Pfizer had some really sort of great thoughts on it. Pfizer's a community manager at Bumble, and I know Vincent Boone, who's master of the world of communities, as well. He had some thoughts on the idea of data, and often data is driven as a requirement from more senior management or
Mm.
senior stakeholders. If a community is being built around a brand that sells a service or product, often from a senior level, you look at a community and we're investing all this money in here. Where's the ROI? So often the times is okay. Well, how has this driven sales and things like that? And when that starts to become part of the conversation, then it does make data a
Mm.
dirty word. It makes it so much harder for community managers. Um, so it's about finding the right data. And
Mm.
actually, I think community managers, to see success within conversations with stakeholders or senior members of the team, should be leading the conversation on data,
Yeah.
not being on the back foot with it. Because that way you're setting the tone of the conversation.
Yeah.
Um, so that's what we're kind of going to chat about today is the why data is useful and important, and what data to ignore. That's the other fun thing, is that there's a lot of vanity metrics
Yeah.
to be looking through as well. But yeah, essentially that's what we're going to be looking at today, is why data is important and how data can benefit us and your community members, who is really what your passion is for.
Nice. So I think let's touch on that in a second. I just want to jump in there. And I think one thing that's popped into my head is it's worth noting that whether you're running a community or you're running a brand which runs a community, data shouldn't just be one person's job, right? Like it's probably
Yeah, yeah.
not going to be the community manager's job to work out if conversations in Slack are converting into sales. However, they should be the ones who are able to speak to the people who do know and able to help pull together that report. And I think they play a part of the puzzle. And I think ultimately, like in any job really, or any kind of role, if you've got data and you're doing a good job, it makes your life so much easier when you're trying to bring people on board in terms of, this is the right direction for the business or the brand or whatever you're running.
Well, it sets those strategic decisions of how to grow, where to grow, why to grow, in those kind of areas. And you're right, it goes throughout the entire customer experience and things like that. Bearing in mind that most people who are involved within, we're talking about communities here driven by, like I said, a brand that sells a product or a service. Most people will be in a community because they've already gone through the customer journey of the sales from the sales perspective. It kind of lives in the end area of the customer journey from a loyalty side of things. And that's when they move into more of the community journey rather than necessarily customer journey. So from that side of the world and that side of things from a conversation perspective, you do need to be having a chat with sales. And like, if you want to, we'll touch upon this in a minute, but if you want to understand how the community helps and impacts direct sales, like if that's a requirement, then it's your sales, whoever's in charge of data and sales should be then looking to see like, oh, this person is a returning customer. Oh, that person is also in the community. Oh, that person is really engaged in the community, which means that maybe that's why this, and it is all interconnected. Like you said, Pete, you're absolutely right.
So you mentioned a few minutes ago vanity metrics. Chat to me about what you think about this. Like, what do you mean by vanity metrics? Because we hear it all the time. We want to start a new project, and it's really important that our members are really engaged. Okay, well, what does that mean? Like, give us more information. So, what do you mean by vanity metrics?
I mean, just to touch on that, like I said, data is hard. Gathering data is hard, and gathering data is particularly hard when you're using a off-the-shelf platform. And then it gets even harder when you're using something more, if your community is in Facebook or your community is in WhatsApp and things like that, because you literally don't have the data points to help you.
Or you just have what they've given to you, don't you? So,
exactly.
You want to find out X and they'll give you Y, but you don't really need Y, you want X. So
this is it. So impressions is one of my favorite metrics that people have. To be like, oh, this post within the community is, let's say it's a community conversational feed. This post has had 5 million impressions. And like, oh, that's great. We've only got 300 members on the platform. That's amazing. That means people have looked at it thousands of times. Like, okay, but is that how is that being tracked? First of all, is that literally someone just scrolling past it in a feed or something along those lines? It can suck you in. So it's sort of vanity metrics don't overly reflect like the health of a community or its effectiveness or the impact that it's having. And these are things like page impressions or total users. I think we touched upon this back in our chat about onboarding, but total users on a platform is not a number that you should be reporting on, because you could have 10,000 users in the platform, right? Who have accounts, but if none of those if 9,000 of those haven't been active or shared any information or got involved in the conversation or the actual community elements, are they there by mistake? Have they just completely dropped out and realized it's not for them and so on? So actually it's gotten like it's now those kind of stuff and those kind of items, how many emails you may have sent out from various automations, how many times those have been read. If nothing tangible is taking action, then that as a metric is not particularly helpful for you. So from a vanity metric perspective, essentially, if it doesn't give you an understanding of engagement, or let's use the salesy word of conversion. I don't really. I mean, like, so if part of your platform, so working with European Climate Foundation, part of the element of the platform is to download, a bit of information. That's as much as I'll give away in this as an open forum. Downloading that information, obviously that is an action and engagement that someone's then wanted to do to go and obtain something. So vanity metrics are those kind of high level items that don't really make an impact. It's about the engagement side of things.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, yeah, no, spot on. And that kind of took my brain down the route of like lead and lag indicators. So like a leading indicator might be how many people have signed up to your community and logged in, how many emails have been sent through a newsletter, where a lagging indicator is something that's kind of, something that's happened. So it could be something like actually that turned into a conversion, or so on. So I think you've got to look at both, right? There's going to be lots of metrics you're going to measure, which hopefully get you to a conversion or whatever your end goal is. But then actually that end one, if you're not measuring that one correctly, you're going to be in just for a world of hurt. In terms of when it comes to what metrics do you think, I'm starting a community for my brand. We sell shoes and I want to get sneakerheads involved. Where should we start? Like metrics that are useful. You're like, the whole point of the community is to get people engaged. They care about my brand. And I want them buying shoes from my shop, not someone else's shop.
So absolutely. Let's talk about those. And again, it what's beneficial about talking about this at the start of a community, or if your community is at the point where it's transitioning into having your own platform, which is the world we work in. The number of times that we get a brief through that says we would like the platform to be able to provide reporting.
Yes. Yeah.
It is
somewhere between 1 and 300 days worth of work.
Yeah, that about that. I mean, so to define what there's the fundamentals. We'll talk about some of those. Define what this actually means. Means that you can drive your community to success.
Yeah,
really needs to be dictated about why do you have the community in the first place. 100%. So as much as we'll talk about these, I want to caveat that is, so say you are, like you said, about selling trainers. Was it trainers that you said?
Yeah, trainers. Yeah.
Selling trainers, be like, well, why would I have a community here? Well, the community might be to inspire and connect those passionate about sport, right? And then you might have different sub kind of reasons for the why. Just when your metric, just make sure your metrics are tied to that. Because first of all, if you go back to the conversation of community managers leading the conversation, if someone comes to you and say, "Can I have this bit of data?" Being like, "Well, we don't particularly track that, or we don't find that overly useful." Be like, "Well, I want it. Why don't we track it?" Like, because it doesn't tie to this. No, it doesn't make any impact. Any data that we glean from this doesn't make an impact to this why.
Yeah.
And then how we can then grow. So and where I was coming from, talking about if your community is on WhatsApp and Facebook, it's going to be tricky in the first place, and also it's going to be difficult to get around the vanity metrics as well, because that's fundamentally what they do share. But if you're building the platform, a bespoke platform, take a look at, actually we got an article on this as well, about why you should consider building a bespoke platform, which is really great. And talking into this, you should setting those understandings in the beginning just means that the data is there for you to fall back on. The problem with data and why people get miserable about it is because you just have to crawl through so much if it's not initially set up. And then if it is then set up, you've got a gap after a certain period of time, and then you can start seeing data and so on. But anyway, that was long-winded and around the houses.
So if go on, carry on.
I was going to say the data to map, but go on, Pete. You dive in, and then I'll
so what I was going to say was, So my angle on that approach, if someone said to me, look, I run a shoe brand, we sell a bunch of shoes online, but we want to really build a community so we can kind of keep people coming back. We want repeat customers. Okay. So the way that I would approach that, I would go, we don't yet know how that community is going to respond and convert. So what I would do is I would go, okay, well, let's invite every existing customer into the community. So that's one metric we're going to measure. We're going to measure how many people actually jump into the community. And then what we ultimately care about is somebody that's engaged in the community going to buy more shoes? Like, what does that look like? Because ultimately, you should have the data, or you should be recording the data that you can pull the stat that after a member joins on X date, 30 or 60 or 90 days later, we expect them to have another conversion. So that's one metric I would be looking at, is like, how quickly should we be looking for someone to convert? The other one would be is, what is the lifetime value of a customer, of somebody who is not in the community, somebody who is in the community but doesn't post, or someone who is engaged? And I would want to know what those three stats are, because ultimately you would expect somebody who is more engaged to be spending more money. And if they're not, then your community probably isn't serving its needs. But if I have those three stats, as a community manager, I feel like I could walk into any boardroom or management meeting and be like, we know that 20% of customers who are engaged in the community spend $100 more a year. Easy. Great. So if we can just get people to that point, and then you can start caring about your vanity metrics, about how engaged are they, how many times are they posting, all that, like all of that stuff. But ultimately, you need to be able to make sure you're recording the right bits of data first, and then care about, okay, well, how do we get them to that point once you know that that point actually converts into the thing you need it to convert into? That makes sense.
Exactly. And it's that element of, what do we want the conversion to be?
Yes.
In that as well, because some communities are there for community purposes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's there for brand awareness. Sometimes it's there for sales.
Reduce support time. Could be anything.
Exactly. And that sort of stuff. So if we talk about if we talk about Squarespace's community, like you said, reduce support time. That is community members helping community members. And then another aspect of that is really active community members can get a promotional badge that then makes them more valuable to people who are just coming to Squarespace to build their website.
Yeah,
there's that, and then Squarespace then go, haha, this person's sold X number of websites. That's beneficial to us. It's all a self-generating ecosystem. Babber and Boo, on the other hand, which are a reusable, they're a reusable nappy brand.
Mm-hmm.
Which are amazing, but sadly no longer in business, and we can't work out why. And I want to buy that brand and restart it, because it is a lovely product. But
you're already busy.
Very true. But for example, they have a Facebook community.
Yeah,
and that Facebook community is built around initially built around just an amazing product.
Yeah.
And within that amazing product, there's a huge number of conversations around new seasonal releases and people getting excited about those. But then you can vote on your favorite releases, or but then also there's a heavy buy, share, swap, secondhand ecosystem market within it, which is encouraged as well. And then and I can imagine a huge we won't move away from Babber and Boo. As much as Saturday's community is finished, we're not going to move away from Babber and Boo using it with our new little baby. And we use it with my other daughters, because that community kept us rolling with the brand, and that stage of overlapping on that customer experience of the loyalty aspect of walking, talking billboards for your brand and self-sustaining customers. And anyway,
let's chat quickly about Yoto.
Yep.
Okay, so for those who don't know, Yoto is a UK brand, a tech brand. They create two primary products. One is the Yoto Mini, which is a box about this big. One is the Yoto Big, which is about this big. And essentially, it's designed for children, that they put essentially an audio book in the shape of a credit card in the top. It plays the audio. It's pretty smart in the fact that as an adult, I get full control of the device, when it goes to sleep, how loud it is, what they can listen to. And as a child, I get what I think is really fun control, in that I can change the volume and I can change like the track.
What stories or music or whatever you want to put in. You have it's getting saying, here, read this, plug it into the Yoto.
So my daughter uses the Yoto player every night. She falls asleep listening to various stories. She uses it in the car, planes, wherever we're going. And they introduced, just before Christmas, I believe, about 6 months ago, they introduced Yoto .space. So I'm a big advocate for Yotos. I've probably sold to my friends 5 to 10 Yoto players, right? And we've
including me.
And we've spent, a lot of money when it comes to the cards and whatnot. And they've always had a fairly good community in terms of just people kind of around Twitter and YouTube and kind of influencers and stuff. But what they introduced was this thing called Yoto.space. And it was a space where people could get together and chat about Yoto. It's essentially a forum, right, for Yoto advocates. And they did something really smart in that they did this thing called Creator Month, where you and your kids could create a story, and then you could upload it, and then somebody could vote on what the best one would be, and then they would release the best ones. Really smart. Great way to get people into the community. Yoto, very unfortunately, has had an absolute product nightmare, and I feel for the team at Yoto so much. So of their Yoto Minis, 326,000 they've sold. I think they've had 7 reports of batteries essentially getting really hot. So in America, they've had to recall all of the products. They've had to tell people to stop using them and distribute a new charging cable. And they're doing the same worldwide, even though it's voluntary in the UK. Now, as you can imagine, people are concerned, upset, have mixed feelings, because it's their kids who are often having this thing on their bedside table. And it's been really interesting watching this unfold on Yoto Space, because rather than it happening on Twitter, it's happening in their land, like it's unfolding in their land, and their CEO, I've forgotten his name, basically kicked off a forum post, which was like, look, we're incredibly sorry. This is what we're doing to do it. In a few more words, he essentially explained it's kind of not as big a deal as everyone thinks it may be. It's, it's 7 out of 300,000 odd devices, but we are rectifying it, and we're extremely sorry. And people kind of chipping in, and I think as someone who works in community, it's been fascinating to kind of see disaster, wartime CEO type vibes, and how community kind of gathers around and either is upset and they share their feelings, or is like, do you know what, you guys are doing a great job, we really appreciate you, looking forward to getting this fixed and whatnot. And it's been fascinating to watch them be able to control the narrative, because they have this community around them. And yeah, it'd be good to get your thoughts, Jacob.
It's the idea of control the story before the story controls you. Type scenario is, if you have a community where your customers are primarily based already within a community, and not just an email newsletter and stuff like that, where then if people want to, if this was an email to jump out, it probably would head over onto X, or Twitter, Twitter X. I'll talk about my personal feelings on that another time. Head over into X and start and then just start firing away. And you then have people who don't necessarily know the brand, or who are incredibly passionate about sharing their opinion, even though they haven't necessarily experienced anything before. It just snowballs into a wonderful PR media frenzy that is mob generated.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, if everything is contained, if you've got everything contained within your customer base, where you've already been feeding them and they've been feeding back to you, and you've got this mutual relationship, you're building a community that is based around trust anyway. But people who are an advocate for the product, who have been engaged in the product and its life cycle and journey within some sort of community space, are often far more patient, forgiving, and loving. From that side of things. So the fact that you can share that through your community and be really just open and honest um, and encouraging about it, but also be able to listen and make people feel heard. Sorry, and things like that is massive.
Yeah.
So it's a really good way of how a community can often feel like, oh, nothing happening, nothing happening, nothing happening. Oh, thank goodness we've got this community here. There's this bomb that's gone off. Let's control that as a conversational point. Because we know news medias alike, they like to do Yotos explode if you touch them. That's the headline, and that might be the case.
Not true. But yeah. Anyway, we got distracted there. So we were chatting about metrics and data and all those kind of things. And we were chatting about what's useful to track, what's maybe not useful to track. And I think let's wrap things up fairly soon. But I'm keen to just ask you two more questions, right? So,
all right.
As somebody running a brand or a business that has a community, but I'm not the one running the community, what should I be expecting from my community manager?
Okay, gotcha. You essentially want to understand if that's the person who we're talking to, it will come down all the time to the bottom line. How does this impact the business? Is it beneficial? Right, that's fundamentally what they want to do, and ideally that will then relate into financial growth, whatever way that might be, product, service, operational savings, no matter what it is. So stop battling that would be my conversation to a community manager. Stop battling that, because in reality, it's what pays for you to be there and for the community to be there.
Amen. Exactly.
Yes. Fundamental truth. So that's that out of the way. So if that's the case, then what a community manager should be sharing about this is the engagement of the community and health of the community, and then ideally guiding how the stats on retention or those sales figures can be obtained or are being obtained. So from an engaged perspective, and this isn't just a vanity metrics, these are engaged perspectives. So page views on something, if it's an informational article or a forum post or something like that, should be is a vanity metric. But page views plus sort of session duration, engagement metrics suddenly makes it far more valuable. So what's beneficial from that sort of stuff from the micro level is, as a community manager, you can say, okay, that page has a lot of views, but also had a huge amount of engagement, engagement from comments and replies and back and forth and new posts and spin-off and articles from it. That was obviously really valuable. Is there something that can sort of grow into? So it helps you make a decision onto how something can grow. So things like that as a balance would be good from that sort of stuff. But if we were to talk about a community where there's active conversation, and this again comes from, I'm going to mention Vincent Boone a lot because I loved sitting next to Vincent. We had lovely talks, including what our favorite type of food is. Within engagement metrics as well, you want to understand how many people are engaged from the different levels that they are. So X number of people had X number of engagements. This person is our highest contributor in terms of posts or information. This person is our highest person in comments. This person is our highest person in replies. And there's difference between comments and replies, by the way, and this is where Vincent stood out. Great little tip. Don't have things as comments, have things as called replies, because that is a conversational starter rather than necessarily just I'm going to say my opinion.
Interesting.
You'll see it on Reddit. It's cracking. As a little tip there. And because we're running out of time, what we'll do is we'll put these into a bit of an article and break down, and here's a range of metrics that you can sort of look at. But also, so it'll be really great to go granular into who's the highest contributor. And again, this allows you to then reward people based on that participation ladder, like we spoke about before.
Well, yeah, but you can't be everywhere, but you can encourage people to help you as be part of your team.
Exactly. And know who that is and who to invest into.
Yeah.
So there are these base metrics, and we'll talk about those more in an article, but also qualitative feedback. This is a big thing that we landed upon at our community dinner. Was now is actually the easiest time we've ever had to collect qualitative data. If you're getting responses and how are you finding this community and things like that, it's actually really simple to gather in a single form or a single sort of location, CSV or something along those lines. And with the use of tools like just ChatGPT or some sort of AI tool, you can give all this qualitative data and then say, could you give me 5 key points on how healthy and engaged our community is? What some of the things we can grow in? What some of the things we can we're succeeding in? That as a communication piece. And actually, I would start with that in every conversation with any stakeholder, is to say, here's some of the amazing thing that our community have said before. Here's some of the growth areas that they would like to see. You're immediately changing the initial start of the conversation from sales orientated to heart orientated.
Nice.
And then you can go down and then you can get into the granular from there.
Jacob, that is a great place to finish, mate. I've loved chatting about this. I feel like we could chat about this all day. I think for me, I love spreadsheets and I love data. And for me, I just really encourage people to love your data, because if you're not making driven decisions, you're just pulling assumptions out of your head. And having gut feeling is fine, but you've got to have some data somewhere. We have mentioned a few times this community dinner. We should chat about that. So we run every month or two. We run dinners primarily in London, where we gather basically a bunch of super smart community folk, and then we ask someone to share for 15, kind of 20 minutes to kind of get the conversation started. And it used to be more of an invite-only thing, but we decided to make it more of an official community of community folk. And you can now find out all about it at what is the URL? I should know this by now. It is
digitalcommunityleaders.com. There's an option to click on dinner. And then you'll see an option to see the report as well, but you'll see Dinner Club up in the navigation that will take you through to the page.
Yeah, exactly. And they're basically a chance just to meet with some really smart community folk, have dinner with them, eat some delicious foods, and all we are kind of ask for those who attend is that they bring something to the table, that they contribute to conversations and they get stuck in. And we've been doing it now for the last couple of years, and I've met some incredible humans, and some of the conversation that comes out of those is really lovely. It can be really lonely running a community. So meeting with other CMs is a really beautiful thing to do.
Fantastic. Come along. We'd love you to have us there, for you to come and join us as well. But absolutely. Yeah, I think that summarizes it for what the data.
Nice. Look forward to it. Well, cheers, Jacob. We'll be back next week with another Platforming Community Live. Until then, have a fab week and we'll see you next week.